All right, Nick, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. There is some good news coming down the pipe for the Dolphins, rather a bullet that was dodged for them. They got on the good luck end of that, and we're going to get into the story and explain what exactly I'm trying to say here, Nick, in just a moment. But Dolphins fans, I have an interesting question for you. There's a guy in my mind that sticks out for this one, but I want to know, of the players who have retired from the Dolphins and not made it to the Hall of Fame yet, who do you think is the most deserving to be in the Hall of Fame? I'm curious what names you're willing to throw out there. But again, of the Dolphins players who've retired and aren't in the Hall of Fame, who do you think is the most worthy to be there? Let us know in the comments below. But Nick, what kind of bullet have the Dolphins dodged here?
Yeah, anytime you have a rough loss like the Dolphins had in San Francisco, 33-17 was the final. You don't want any, massive damage that goes beyond that one game because everyone has bad games. And Tua unfortunately left the game early with an ankle injury, but there's good news on that front. According to NBC Sports, the injury is minor. It's something that Tua could have actually returned to the game if the game is close. He's expected to start and be at full strength week 14 for the Miami Dolphins. This was a tough game for Tua. He threw his first interception against the 49ers since September. Frankly, it was a tough game for all the Dolphins organizations, the entire Dolphins team. This was a big matchup for Miami. Unfortunately, they didn't come up to speed and come up with a big win, but they're still in a strong position to make a playoff run. There's still a lot of good energy, a lot of good vibes. You saw Sheffield with the long catch and run. Tyreek Hill is still active, right? So again, the core is still there. The potential is still there for this team to keep building off the momentum they had earlier in this season. Miles, what do you think of this Dolphins team into it? Do you think this is an opportunity for them to maybe, to take some lumps that kind of reset themselves and get ready for the playoff push, or do you think this will have a long-term effect on them negatively?
I I think it was good news, Nick, because what are they riding now? Like a 5-game winning streak. They were coming into the game. They were the whole thing. Tua's undefeated in every game that he started and finished. Technically didn't finish this game, so the streak's still going. But you know, I always feel like back in when the Ravens were going and they made that incredible 14-2 run a few years ago. It always feels good, like when you have all of this momentum. What comes with that momentum is a ton of pressure. Tua probably feels like, well, I haven't lost a game yet. Every game that I've played all the way through this year, we've won. We're on this huge winning streak. There's all these expectations, and when you have a loss like this, it kind of takes the expectations off your shoulder a little bit. It kind of backs the pressure down, and you can take a step back and go, okay, all right, that was a fun ride, but let's reassess, let's regroup. Something didn't work right here, but you can take that step back, Nick, and kind of go in with a fresh, level head to the rest of this back half of the schedule and start to build that momentum up. Sometimes you get a little bit too big, too fast, and you need to get taken down just one notch and start to rebuild back up. And I think that's exactly what happened to the Dolphins here. And I think this is a good thing for them. If they would have gone undefeated through the rest of the season, I think the expectations would have been enormous, and that's a lot of pressure for any one person to handle. So I think it's good to happen now rather than later.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You look back at last year, you look at the two teams that made the Super Bowl, the Bengals out of the AFC, the Rams, of course, out of the NFC. And people forget both these teams in the November, December timeframe had brutally bad losses. Looking at the Bengals schedule here, I pulled it up. So the Joe Burrow-led Pittsburgh Cincinnati Bengals blew out Pittsburgh 41-10, November 28th. Their next game at home against Los Angeles Chargers, they got killed 41-22. Burrow played bad through 2 interceptions. They could never get anything going. They just got blown out from the get-go. Sound kind of familiar, right? Of course, the Bengals righted the ship. They made the playoff run all the way up to the Super Bowl. You go over to the Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams. People forget the Rams with Matt Stafford were struggling for about a month towards the latter part of last season. They turned it around late after they kind of figured themselves after losing some tough games. They got killed by San Francisco. Stafford had a 3-pick game, I believe. So again, there you go, a tough loss there. And then they lost to Green Bay, a game they were blown out. They came back and made it a little closer, but they still were handled easily by the Green Bay Packers. But the Rams found a way to overcome that. The Bengals found a way to overcome that. And sometimes I feel like that's what you need as a team. You mentioned pressure. I just think sometimes you get a little, I don't want to say overconfident, but you kind of just stick with plays and schemes and systems that work. I've been on teams in college where you have a couple really nice games, especially offensively, and you just feel like you can just run your offense and you're just going to blow teams out the gate. Sometimes you need to get smacked in the mouth a little bit to realize, okay, we have to be a little more creative at times. We have to, adapt a little bit more. We have to continue on getting better. We can't stay the same. We got to keep getting better. I think having a loss like this to a San Francisco team, let's be honest, even though the injury at quarterback, they have a great roster. It was an East to West Coast trip. Those are always brutally tough for teams traveling. I think this was, if there's a time to have a loss, this was the time to do it, and gives the Dolphins plenty of time to recalibrate, regroup, and make a push for the rest of the year.
This is my final good news for the Dolphins, Nick. The good news is you won't have to face a 49ers team like this until the Super Bowl. That would be the next time they met. So if you can go through the next game, an AFC opponent and the Chargers, if you can go through the Bills, you can go through a couple teams like that. You got the Chiefs. Those are the teams you need to face. You won't have to go up against a formidable defense like this again until potentially the Super Bowl if they make it that far, which I think they have the ability to do so. So I think that this is the perfect time for them to go through all of this.
And by the way, one note here, the Dolphins were brutal with injuries on the left and right tackle position going into this game. That's the 49ers defensive strength, is defensive line. So we had, an opportunity, strength of San Francisco against weakness due to injuries by the Dolphins. Sometimes that happens in the NFL. Come playoff time, expect the Dolphins to hopefully be much healthier, and this won't kind of impact will happen again. Won't happen again.